Hello everyone, my name is Mimi Williams and I am here with Frontline in the beautiful and pristine Gallatin Valley. Tonight's story is one of the social and economic impacts of contamination in an area that is so thoroughly recreated. We will be talking with Scott about a PCE plume that has daylighted in the Gallatin River, a very popular recreation site. Good evening, everyone. My name is Mimi Williams, and I am here to talk to Scott Karlstrom, a water resources engineer, about the documented contamination of PCE in the East Gallatin River. Scott has overseen RCRA and Superfund cleanup sites in the Minneapolis and St. Paul region of the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency and is a registered civil engineer in Minnesota. He has 3 years of experience in soil and groundwater remediation as a consultant and also 15 years of work experience as a water resources engineer and hydrologist designing stormwater pond systems. Scott, we would like to ask you some questions about what has been going on with this issue. So can you tell us about some of the documented information?
From the information presented during our recent field tour of the site, this site is very similar to a site in New Hope, Minnesota. The water table is shallow, the soils are relatively sandy and porous, and there's also a similar remediation system at this site. The site in Minnesota is known as Electronic Industries. It was a defense contractor in the 1990s. Electronic Industries was about 30th on the state Superfund list in Minnesota at the time, and I became the manager of that site as one of the first sites that I had working for the Pollution Control Agency. Many of these companies can only afford to spend a limited amount of money on remediation. So in this case, we gave them some latitude to try and improve things, and they built their own soil vapor extraction system, for which I provided the design criteria. And the soil vapor extraction systems are really popular because you can do the remediation on site. So as you can see here, this is a treatment shack, and the soil vapor extraction system is running right now. And the soil vapor extraction system is based basically in simple language on two things. One, you have to be trying to extract something from the soil and the groundwater that's volatile. So in this case, PCE is very volatile and exerts a vapor pressure in the ground, and when applying a suction to that, you can remove a lot of the absorbed contaminant directly from the soil and groundwater. So it works in a very simple way, and it doesn't require that all the contaminated soil be dug up. So that's the reason that we use that.
So can you tell us about the nature of the PCE contamination with regards to its extent and its location?
Yes, we have a couple of maps here from the Montana DEQ, and these maps provide an idea of roughly where the contamination is. So we are standing down on this south end of the map, just off Main and 15th, and so we're about here where my thumb is, and this goes all the way down 7th Avenue and down 19th Avenue, the plume does, and then all the way over to the East Gallatin is the north boundary of the plume.
And so can we talk about a little bit about the concentrations of this plume?
Yeah, the plume is diagrammed like it is. There's a maximum contaminant level for drinking water, and this map was developed with that in mind. And the fact is that these plumes violate the maximum contaminant level for PERC, and that basically has repercussions. Luckily, Bozeman is not drinking shallow groundwater, but other people may be drinking it. And then if you look at this second map, This is the East Gallatin, and these are platted real estate lots. So that it shows where the city water main ends. So that means that someone buying these lots here and the owner of the lots are impacted by this contamination. The story of this site really is that the contamination was discovered in 1989. And during that time, apparently, and not being a Bozeman resident, I wouldn't know all the details, but during that time, nothing happened out here as far as doing anything to mitigate the contamination that's there. Had an SVE system been put here on site 20 years ago, it probably would have been very effective, more effective even than now, and the plume would likely be smaller.
Okay. So as we all know, in the Gallatin Valley, recreation and the opportunities to recreate in public areas is incredibly important. Can you talk about the impact of this type of contamination to recreation areas in Bozeman?
Well, there's a recreation area that a lot of people use. It's only a few miles from here, and we plan to visit it as part of this discussion later in the day. And it's known as the Cherry Creek access, and it's right off the frontage road to the freeway. The plume extends right down to the East Gallatin River at that point. So it's heavily used recreationally. People conceivably eat fish out of there, including me. And the levels of groundwater and apparently measured in the East Gallatin River are higher than one might like to see.
So now, you mentioned real estate previously. Can we talk a little bit more about the social and economic impacts and the projected cost last reported by the Bozeman Chronicle?
Yeah, if I make a quick comparison to Electronic Industries, they were a unique company. So as a regulator at that time, I took the position, and my management supported me, that since they had the capability to build a system themselves, we let them do that, and we looked over the design parameters and so forth. We were able to build our soil vapor extraction system for less than $25,000 in between 1990 and 91. And just as a very, very rough comparison, if you compare $25,000 and removing a lot of TCE and doing it relatively quickly, and make $7 million look really hard to swallow. And basically, I wouldn't want to be a taxpayer in Bozeman paying for such a long, protracted cleanup. But at this point, the bioremediation type of solution that's been proposed, I don't know that I would propose anything different. A lot of the contaminants have already moved past the point, in my view, where the SVE could get at it.
All right. So given this background information, it's time now to switch over into what could really be happening in real time. Welcome back, everyone. Again, I am Mimi Williams with Frontline News. Right now, we are at the Cherry Creek access of the East Gallatin River. At this point, we have data that suggests that water samples have been taken from the river with undesirable levels of PCE concentration. When our camera crew rolled up, we came up on two very concerned citizens that we will be talking to now.
So, I don't know, I mean, should we be eating the fish out of here?
I ate one about 10 days ago.
Did you really?
Yeah, I was flipping a 2-pound T-bone on a number 3 tippet.
Wow.
And a really large rainbow inhaled a piece of T-bone.
Yeah?
And I thought that rainbow would really be good, but I might even get a little T-bone out of the deal.
Have you felt any effects from eating that trout other than just your hunger being satisfied?
Well, I'll tell you, dude, my mom is almost 103 and she eats fish all the time.
Yeah?
she just eats whatever I give her, but I've not fed her a lot of fish out of here. And frankly, I'm really worried. I saw a group of fishermen in here last week, and they fish here all the time, and they're starting to look just like this.
Oh man.
I don't want to become a mutant.
Yeah, me neither.
Mutant is bad. Maybe it was really nice of you to come out and discuss the Bozeman Superfund site with us today.
Of course, of course.
And your reward is some fish that I caught a couple weeks ago.
Now the question is, if I eat this,
Yeah,
am I going to mutate?
you could.
I could.
Yeah.
In the name of investigative journalism, I have to eat this.
Well, this fish here, Mimi,
All right?
is safe.
That one is safe. This one, however,
from
is
the
from
East
the
Gallatin.
Gallatin River.
Yeah,
All right.
that's a rainbow. Does it taste mutagenetic?
It tastes delicious.
You should be aware that for TCE and PCE that the bioconcentration factor for fish runs from 10 to 30. So we think that more study is required and fish flesh should be sampled by the DEQ or Fish and Wildlife or both.
All right. So our further action here is monitoring whether or not fish monitoring will be implemented in the East Gallatin River. Thank you everyone for watching tonight. Have a great evening.